I do see my colleagues at Kepler Institute here. I see Diop and Damon and maybe Miss Paulette and Khalil in the waiting room. Jared, thanks for being here tonight, and thanks for the great work you guys are doing on that project.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak on it. And if anyone ever needs to reach me, actually the best way, parkwestpartners@gmail.com. Gmail.com is going to be the best way to get a hold about this project. Parkwestpartners@gmail.com. So thank you all. I appreciate the time.
You as well, sir. Thank you. Well, so next up, I see Miss Paulette and I see Diop and I see Damon. We're going to talk a little bit about one of the oldest remaining, probably the oldest remaining mixed use commercial structure on 38th Street, which is 3802 North Illinois, also known as the Concord building. Built in 1923 as KT Brock's drugstore and Bruce's Deli. Later, this picture shows Haig's Drugs. Haig's Drugs took over KT Brock's sometime in the 30s or 40s. The building is sort of the last remaining mixed-use structure on the corridor from the original days. It was the first built in the Butler, Tarkington, Crown Hill area there. And it's had a hard 98 years on this earth, but it's got a bright future. Isn't that right, Paulette? So what we're talking about tonight is this building is in transition as well, in partnership between Midtown and Kepra and New Life Development Ministries and BWI Development. Midtown has entered into an agreement with the Kepler Institute to sell the building to them such that it can be placed into a community land trust. And that model basically means rather than one corporation or one entity owning, it's communally owned, that it belongs to the community. And that will help preserve it from future threats. But the other exciting part of this is that Kepra has been a tenant in that space since just right before the pandemic. In February of 2020, they proudly opened Alchemy, an entrepreneurship space, and were very quickly sidelined by the pandemic. But their vision for that space and ours align very well. And so we have now entered into a relationship where we're going to be moving Alchemy upstairs and repurposing the first floor for entrepreneurs and community space, and moving the building into a land trust. And I'm going to start with Miss Paulette and let you talk a little bit about what Alchemy is. And Damon, Diop, anybody else who wants to speak up, I will turn it over to you. You're on mute, dear.
Again, thank you so much. And I just really appreciate the community coming out to hear about the plans that we have for the building. We call the whole space our community wealth building initiative, meaning that all the things that we're going to be doing in the building will be about community wealth. And the first big project that we're starting off with is our Alchemy Accelerated Incubator project. And the gentleman on the call tonight, each of the gentlemen is spearheading a particular piece of that. Of course, as an elder member in the group, I've just followed along with these young men to see how they are moving this project. It's big because it involves the community. All our programs, we live here. We know what we need, but then we feel like unless we are engaging the community and how we deliver the services of the programs we think we want, then we still haven't succeeded. So if Khalil is on the line, I was going to have Khalil talk about the construction. I was going to have Damon talk about the Alchemy plan, and have Diop talk about the philosophy of what we're doing in the plan. He's working in the Alchemy plan also. So Khalil, are you on the line? Gosh, did you?
I don't see Khalil yet. I see Damon and Diop, but I don't see Khalil.
Oh, okay. Then Damon, would you speak to the renovations of the building and how we will be renovating the building, and then give a little bit about Alchemy, and have Diop finish the rest because I know he's on the line.
Sure, and I'll lean on kind of Michael if you do have those blueprints and things of that nature. But definitely several sessions over the past few months in terms of just how to really get the most utilization of the space. Like Michael stated, kind of moving alchemy and, for lack of a better word, entrepreneurial programming to the top level floor. And then, of course, using that lower space for kind of flexible community space and even ongoing workshops and conferences in that space. And so it's been a great partnership with Michael and some other New Life ministries and things of that nature, both in terms of how do we envision that space. I grew up a couple blocks east of that space and frequent Tarkenton a lot, and so it's just went to Short Ridge, and so it's really great to now in my 40s be a part of that. So that's kind of one element of it. But in terms of overall alchemy, that's been an ongoing program for about 2 or 3 years now. Of course, we launched like Michael said in 2019 in that space, pre-pandemic, through a partnership with Ford Cities. But that really was kind of the tail end of what we've been doing from a community wealth building standpoint, and how we envision that, and why alchemy is so critical to that is BIPOC organizations kind of owning their own solutions to their own problems, particularly through entrepreneurship. And then, and that's and also continuing that in the community and sharing that with community. And so we're really excited to kind of have a physical presence with high profile in the neighborhood that we all love and cherish. And so that's a great part of it. And so where we're kind of at in that phase now is try to give an overall alchemy program overview. It's incubator, accelerator, and then an ongoing fellowship. And so we've actually kicked off our 3rd cohort this week through support of some of our grantors and community partners. Kicked off with 38 BIPOC entrepreneurs who are looking to build sustainable businesses, bring jobs, livable wage, buildable wage in our community, and utilize that space in that way. And so, the space on Concord being an anchor for that is something that we're really excited about and looking to get the build going here shortly. And so, yeah, so Mike, I'll kind of hand that part over to you, and I can answer any questions about alchemy if there are any. But I think the other phase of that too, as we talk about when we graduate entrepreneurs through the incubator program, which is a 3-month program, and then going to the longer accelerator program, being able to really utilize that space as kind of a community network. We've done a lot of work in our, have talked with Speakeasy and other organizations in terms of bringing that and the ownership of that particular type of model through a community lens. And so we're just really excited about bringing that to the city and having that space be an anchor.
Well, thanks, Damon. The only thing I would add is the sort of scope of what you're going to see changed on the building. You're not going to see major changes to the exterior. If Tom rolls back one slide, you'll notice we've had the windows boarded up for some time, and we've used those boarded up windows as an opportunity to tell a community story. And so the Black Legacy Project, curated by Sabé Martin and Will Marquez, is still there. That installation will be relocated at some point during the project as those boards and the whole window frames are being pulled out of the building and restored. While the new windows will not be 100% historically accurate, we're not trying to fundamentally change the look of the exterior of the building. You'll see a rendering below that shows you rather than double hung windows, we're switching to more of an awning style window, just to sort of allow free air in the COVID times to circulate through the building. But effectively, Tom, if you roll back or forward, I'm sorry, the main points here were to take these 2 separate spaces that have never been connected. This building was built with retail downstairs and residential upstairs. And so to sort of help Alchemy meet that collaborative model that they run, the idea was to connect the first and second floors together. And so we're going to cut a giant hole between the two floors and reorient the staircase so that you no longer have to go to a separate entrance to go upstairs outside on the street, that you can literally ebb and flow from the main retail space up to the upstairs office space, and to really reinforce the history and the words of Concord, of bringing people together and really investing in people through community wealth. This rendering is a slightly outdated. Miss Paulette has had her way with openness, and so there's a few less walls in the final rendering of this than what you're seeing in this early concept, but effectively all those walls with that little private office get opened up, and the whole second floor is not quite the ballroom Miss Paulette asked for, but it is a wide open space with lots of transparency between rooms. So we're removing the historic 5 apartments up there and transforming it into an open concept office space with new mechanical, new electrical, new plumbing, new finishes, new stairwells, new structure, new roof. So this 98-year-old building will, at the end of this project, have at least another 100 years of life left in it. And with that, I'll pass it to Diop or Paulette or whoever's ready to go next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say a little bit. Just primarily what I'll speak about is why Kepra is marching towards our initiative of alchemy, community wealth building. And really simply, our belief, our philosophy is that communities of color need institutions that reflect their cultural beliefs and are cooperatively owned by the people in those communities. So alchemy it has a few different pieces. Damon spoke about the particular piece tied to economic opportunities being generated through teaching people how to do that. But when you think about community wealth, you think about health, you think about food, you think about fitness, you think about education, mental wellness. It's a lot of different aspects. And all of those aspects need to have community institutions creating businesses or models to impact those industries. And we feel that the best thing we can do is take the pieces we've learned from our model of being an independent nonprofit with the entrepreneurial footing and provide the lessons learned to community, as well as look to identify prospective community wealth builders right here to help us march towards having leverage on all of the pieces that impact a community's wealth. So that's kind of the philosophical vantage point through which we are marching towards to get this accomplished. This facility, this building, will serve as basically the hub of energy for that, not limited to this physical space, but that will be really where a lot of this energy takes place.
So I have a question. So what's the challenges of community wealth building linked to entrepreneurship?
That's a question for me.
Sure.
Challenges for community wealth building linked to entrepreneurship. Well, I think one thing is community wealth building is probably foreign to a lot of people. And then, a lot of times when people think of entrepreneurship, they can think of a bottom line. They can prioritize profit, and they may not necessarily be people-centered or community-rooted. So I think that's one thing. So it's a paradigm shift to begin to think about, all right, we're creating an entrepreneurial model specifically tied to impacting the lives and the whole the well-being of our community. So I think that's one main challenge. I think another challenge is resources. Mm-hmm. So, when you come from communities of color, a lot of times there are a lack of fiscal resources or material resources. There are other resources that exist in these communities abundantly, but a lot of times there's a scarcity mindset tied to not having access to fiscal dollars. So I think educating people on how to create opportunities with what they have and to grow that, and then how to develop relationships that allow you to have access to all the types of capital is another challenge in terms of the mindset and the way in which people should approach it. And then I think the other thing I'll say is too, just pain. You know, communities have a lot of pain and distrust for entities that may appear to be big or may appear to look and feel differently than what has historically existed in the community. So I think providing space for people to heal and then a vehicle for them to express their concern through creating models that protect their interests is another challenge.
Well,
Yeah,
I'd like to add to that, Diop, and say that, you know, just to point out for folks, I don't think we've mentioned yet that beyond this being held in a community land trust, that every aspect of this project is focused on community. We're not just hiring a contractor, we're hiring a contractor of color. We're not just hiring subcontractors, we're hiring 60% of XBE. And we're not just hiring professional contractors, we're using this scope of work as an opportunity to impact the lives of individuals who may have been formerly incarcerated or underemployed. And so our partners at New Life Development Ministries are carving out scopes of work on this building and teaching the trade of construction and basic construction skills, such that we're using every facet of this building, not to just support alchemy and not to just support preservation and to restore the building, but in every facet of the building, it is designed to build community wealth by hiring local folks, by hiring contractors that understand the struggles and are willing to commit the resources to make this building as special as it can be, and to ensure that the impact of the project is not shallow, but is deep and broad.
Thank both of you guys.
And then the only thing I would say is if someone wants to speak a little bit about the KIF part of alchemy.
yeah, for sure. And that's kind of where I was going to chime in there. Diop, you kind of hinted on it, but just exploitive systems of capital, really, you know, capital being one of those things that kind of operates on a particular system or a certain system. And so part of this community wealth building ecosystem that we're building out is not just about the education and the support of entrepreneurs, but also putting patient and equitable capital behind them. And so how we look at that is, you know, the launch of our KIF fund, which is our Kepler Integrated Fund. And so as a nonprofit, we're strategically in a position to be able to kind of give those particular type of financial vehicles to these entrepreneurs so that we are not only building the pipeline of entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurial community, but also have that financial capital and resource capital behind those entrepreneurs. And so part of that is what we've done. And this is kind of a first for us in terms of a nonprofit integrated model around supporting those entrepreneurs through our nonprofit status and through some other kind of financial vehicles as well. And so really excited about that being kind of the other half of the Alchemy Incubator Accelerator Program. And again, that being focused primarily on community ownership, not just from an entrepreneurial side, but also from an investment side as well. So really keeping community central to that and building that ecosystem and really using Concord and the Tarkington neighborhood as kind of a place, like Diop said, to kind of nestle that, but not necessarily be confined by that. And
So
really,
Damon,
yeah.
a couple of quick questions.
Mhm.
One, if I want to get in the pipeline for that opportunity, how do I do that? And two, a little bit more about what is patient capital versus equity, et cetera.
Yeah, so I'll tackle the patient capital. Patient capital is definitely people first capital. I think Diop mentioned it in terms of just kind of, we all know kind of the systemic thing and kind of the situations that we're looking at now in terms of social justice, things of that nature. And a lot of that is kind of rooted not only in race, but also in, in systems of capitalism. And so when we talk about patient capital, we talk about capital that works with the entrepreneur where they are with what they have and puts behind them not only the financial side, but also kind of the education side, the support side, the mental health side of that, and really working with an entrepreneur from start to scale and sell and a broader ownership perspective with those particular type of principles in mind. And so when we also talk about capital, we aren't just talking about financial capital. We're talking about intellectual capital, cultural capital, all those things that are resources in which we call, systems of economy, bringing that, raising that, and really just trying to bring that particular type of culture to Indianapolis, because we've seen that model, across the world.
So how do I got a small business and I want to get in the game. What do I do?
It's real simple. You go to Alchemy, ALKHEMYKI.org, and I'll drop the link in the chat as well. Fill out the application, and we just kicked off our current cohort, but we're always doing ongoing workshops, partnerships with other incubators in the space, CBFIs, BOI, Black Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, et cetera. And so just really kind of trying to contribute to what, the great work that's already going on in the city. So I'll drop that information in the link as well. And then I also point a link to the overall KIF, Kepler Integrated Fund that we're building out. Our goal is to raise 20 million over the next 3 years. And we're looking to kick that off and launch that in early September, and, already starting to feed entrepreneurs into the pipeline so that we can put some support behind them.
Can I just ask a kind of a clarifying question about patient capital?
Sure.
My understanding is that the mindset of most investors is, return on investment, and some people like that the next quarter. Some are willing to wait, 48 months, but it's a pretty short time frame. My understanding of patient capital is that they're not necessarily looking at the next quarterly income statement, but are willing to allow the funds that are deposited into a particular endeavor to percolate and work there. And so there's a reduced level of stress on the borrower, for example, to have to repay, and that allows for cash flow to generate things like that. Is that similar to what your understanding of it?
Yeah, and so there's several ways that we look at it, both from kind of what's traditionally in the marketplace, higher interest rates, potential for bankruptcy, things like that, that a lot of times Black and brown entrepreneurs aren't given privy to because they don't, have the higher, they don't have the higher credit score. They don't necessarily have a business. We've been looking at some studies where, I think north of 90% of Black and brown owned businesses are sole proprietors. And so there's just this gap, access gap, education gap, health and wellness gap, that we understand that it's a long journey when we put not just financial investment behind a Black and brown entrepreneur, but kind of all the other things in an ecosystem that may already be in, white spaces, male dominant spaces. And I think the other way we look at that, well, let me backtrack. So there's a number of financial vehicles that not only us, that we're in a position as a nonprofit to be able to do recoverable grants, things of that nature that reinvest into kind of the overall community pot. But on the other side of it too is we always know that capital usually rests in white males' hands. And so how do we give access to those who aren't quote unquote accredited investors to not only support their entrepreneurs in their community by going to their shops and businesses, but also being able to support them financially, resourcefully as well. And so when we look at patient capital, it's kind of both ends of the spectrum, with one thing in mind, really supporting that entrepreneur. And I think the other side of it and how we look at it too is we know that there's a long trail to what community wealth building is. Of course, it starts with jobs, it starts with financials, but there's kind of a trickle down effect, the ability to be able to own and transfer assets to community, which has a longer track life. We're now going from quarter to quarter to decade and 100 years and beyond. And so when we talk about patient capital, we look at it that way. How do we support entrepreneurs now, but how do we also include vehicles that also puts the success of those entrepreneurs not just into the few or the top, at the top of that business, but also puts it into the investors in the community who invested in that, and then also has equitable share in the success of that business and not just kind of in the hands of the few, which means the investors, which are typically white males, and then the CEO and the C-suite at the top of the building. So we look at things like cooperative models. Michael talked about the construction. That's a construction co-op. So not only are we doing job training, but also doing ownership in that through those that work in the organization as well. So we look at co-ops, other nonprofits, ESOPs, and that kind of rings back to alchemy as well. You know, we're not just a traditional incubator and, you know, in tech companies that are high growth, high scale. We're looking at supporting nonprofits, co-ops, ESOPs, et cetera, more equitable systems. Because we know, you know, the world is built of systems, organic systems that self-actualize. And so for us, you know, we're not necessarily trying to change the system. We're trying to build our own systems that support us.
Thank
So
you.
there's,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, there's tangible ways that works, lower interest rates, royalty, things of that nature, not just necessarily equity or debt, high interest debt. That's typically what we have available to us in this current system as Black and brown entrepreneurs, but there are so many other vehicles that can support those entrepreneurs that lead to patient capital.
Are there other questions? We've got a pretty amazing group of individuals here to answer them if you got them. I see Miss Brenda Vance on here, and I'm sure she has a question. Brenda, you always got a question, don't you? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not trying to put me on the spot. I came in so late that if I were to ask a question, it would show that I even more came in late. So I'm going to be quiet. But what I've heard so far sounds good.
Thanks, Brenda. One of the things we haven't said yet is sort of the time frame. You know, we've been working on this since we got word from the endowment in early March, and we've selected a construction manager. You'll start to see the first cohort of trainees moving into the space as early as the end of the month, first week of September, to start doing some selective demo as part of their training. And then you should see the things really start to mobilize in late September, early October, in terms of the construction managers hitting the site and permits being filed and secured. And this whole project should wrap up on or before June the 30th of 2022. It will be a little tight on the site when dumpsters start rolling out, but just know that behind those dumpsters and those hammers, that really good things are happening every day.
Khalil has joined us. Khalil, you want to say anything about our relationship with New Life?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Khalil Omar Africa, project liaison for this wonderful endeavor. I was just, listening, thinking as I was kind of just thinking about the conversation and discussion that, at the end of the day, really, this is all of this kind of fits in, our work. We are relationship builders, but those relationships are, genuine. Within those relationships, there are opportunities to leverage, and that's what's important about community. And through that, that's, how we've ended up in this space with our partners, with Midtown and of course, New Life. And the unique thing about New Life, and I just love when Philip Moore, who's the case manager with New Life, he just speaks about that New Life takes in the, he calls it the EMT, it's emergency. New Life takes in you as you are, primarily focuses on formerly incarcerated individuals. That's the primary focus, but whoever, who comes in at whatever place, and they take that. And for us, at least from our perspective, that is the crux of a community. And then in our work, we get an opportunity to utilize some of those leverage points to provide access whichever way we can to community to be able to grow, develop, utilize the platform, learn skills, and so forth as well. So that's all I really say. Unless there's any questions about that. It's been a great endeavor, a lot of, always a lot of unknown surprises and other things to think about, and other tentacles that grow from the work as well. So yeah, good work.
Michael?
Yes.
This is Mark Demerley. Again, I apologize for being late, but I'm just awed by the group here. I mean, this is got way overdue, obviously, in our society. And anything that I can do financially, even, please reach out to me. I mean, everybody that's spoken so far, I'm still just like shaking in regards to just, what this could really do in regards to impact.
Well, Mark, I appreciate that, and I'll be happy to connect you with some folks over at Kepra. They, like us, are a nonprofit organization, and any financial support you could offer to them to support this, I think they would appreciate it. But they also appreciate social capital. And you're an architect, a very accomplished architect, and I think just engaging with this cohort. We've had a couple of different architects come through and talk with these folks, but Mark, if you'd be willing to come and spend a couple hours with our cohort, I can't speak for Phil or Khalil, but I think I know the cohort and others would appreciate that opportunity. So there's a lot of ways to get engaged. And the same goes for Mr. Colby. Nick, Nick's got an HVAC company. And so I feel like there's a lot of good folks here to hear this message and an opportunity to sort of into network and social capital, if not financial resources.
Yeah,
sorry about that, Michael. I lost contact, but yeah, I'd be more than happy to do whatever and beyond. Okay, I need to take off for now, but
sure.
Again, great stuff.
Appreciate it, Mark, and I'll send you an email and connect you to the folks over at Kepra. Appreciate it.
Sweet. All right, bye, guys.
Any other questions from folks we haven't heard from? I see a Clark on the phone. Clark, any thoughts or questions from you?
None right now, but hey, this does definitely sound exciting. I'm glad to see the building getting some more new life. A third life, a third act.
Well, probably more like a 23rd act. This building's
that's true.
Had a lot of entertainment over 98 years. But this is going to be its final act, and it'll last for a long time. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. Congrats, guys.
Anything else? We don't have to keep people till 7:30, but like to finish efficiently, but certainly don't want to leave any questions on the table. So for those of you who came late, you may have missed the notice that we did record this. We will be posting this up on our social media accounts and on our website moving forward, broken down into the project bits along with the plans. So if you weren't aware of that notice because you came late, just be aware of it now. And KI, everybody, Diop, Damon, Paulette, M, I appreciate you very much. And to all the community stakeholders who joined us, we're really, really grateful. Anything else before we wrap up?
Hey, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you all soon. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll end the call with that. Thank you very much.